Ah, there you are.
Soha. That's the Polish pronunciation.
Soha.
Soha.
Yes.
And which club are you with?
Humboldt Bay Toastmasters in Eureka.
Fantastic. I'm so happy to see you.
Wow.
You're so isolated up there, and we love you, but we never get to see you.
Oh no, we love the isolation. It's wonderful here. I don't know if you can see this, but I live amongst redwood trees. I got bees and chickens. I get to be an engineer, and I work remotely, and life is good.
Life is good. Yeah.
Wonderful. Hi, Vicki. Did you bring popsicles for everybody?
Yeah, sure. Here you go. Here you go.
Okay. There we go.
My favorite, Outshine Bars, coconut cream or creamy coconut.
Wow.
Yeah, very yummy.
Pineapple one in one hand, and you can get lost in the rain, the whole thing. Fantastic. So
Sounds good. Sounds like a beautiful song. And then I'll end up with my husband. So that's all good.
and I see we have Mari on as well.
Wait, is that me?
Yep.
Yes, but I probably mispronounced your name.
It's Mati. Hey.
Well, that was
Okay.
easier than Soha. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Just so you know, I think I described this pretty well in the email. We're not going to have Vice President Education training until July 18th in our district, which to me is a little late. And I'll be running the training in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I figured we could just jump in here and give you the opportunity to ask questions. We've got some very experienced people here and some new folks. Chat back and forth about the things that are concerning you right now about your job. Tonight, I invited my good friend, distinguished Toastmaster Satish Shenoy, who is in one of my home clubs down here in District 101. He gave a great presentation about the reason behind Pathways a few weeks ago. So I'd like him to start with that tonight. I think it's a great place for us to start our discussions. Is there anybody who has a burning question or something you want to say before we start the presentation? Okay, and I will be coming back to you. I see, John, you just posted something in the chat. Chat away. If there's a dog barking in the background, please shut down, mute yourself. But other than that, feel free to keep your video open and your microphone unmuted so that we can have an open and free-ranging conversation.
Hey, Dennis, John says, I'm coming at this so fresh, I'm not sure which questions to ask. That's okay, John. We are all were at that point, at some point in our journey. So it's all good. No question is a bad question. Please do stop me, ask Dennis, whatever it takes, John. We want you to leave with something that's useful to you, and hopefully we do that today.
Before you jump in, I'm going to take 1 minute to reassure John. When I joined Toastmasters 13 years ago, my club had never had a vice president of education. So they said, hey, how would you like to be the vice president of education? Like you, I loved the title. And took it right on. I went to training and said, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? The club had never used the competent leadership manual, which was the leadership track at the time. No one had ever, one person had earned a competent communicator award. So when I actually earned my CC 6 months into my tenure as a Toastmaster, they took my CC certificate and they put it in a walnut frame because only 2 people had ever achieved this amazing feat of getting a competent communicator. Well, 6 months later, I got an advanced communicator bronze, and they were absolutely flummoxed. They didn't know what to do. People didn't earn awards like that. And so I said, you know what? It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. everybody should be earning these awards. And this is what Abhi was saying. You can change your Toastmasters club in the space of your term by setting the expectations, giving them the opportunity to get up and speak. And I took a club where no one had ever achieved awards to a club where practically everyone was achieving at least one educational award per year in the old system. That would translate to 3 levels per year in pathways right now. This is what we're going for, to make it commonplace for everyone in Toastmasters to achieve their goals and build on the skills that they're supposed to learn. So you, my friend, are just like me, except you have more hair and you're more handsome than I was when I joined 13 years ago. And now, with no further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to Satish, who's going to walk us through the whole rationale behind this pathways thing. But he's muted.
Satish, you're muted. Satish, you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Dennis, again. And John, you're in the presence of one of the best VPs that almost ever existed. I don't know the world of VPs, but at least in District 101, I can tell you, you're speaking to the one and only Dennis Dawson, who is one of the best VPs I know, right?
Oh, I thought you meant Larry Millard. He's also.
I had a feeling I was stumbling into something useful.
All right, so let me share my screen. Can you guys see is Pathways good for Toastmasters?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Dennis, are you going to record anything just for anybody that needs it?
It's a recording.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, the story of Pathways began in 2010 when the board of directors of Toastmasters identified a few areas within the organization. You know, they said these Toastmasters, they seem to like coming. Our membership is growing, but they don't seem to really catch on to this education program we have. And I'll share some numbers why they said that. Extensive research and analysis was done, and there were some surprising, even shocking results that they saw from the education program. And that's when they said, this board at Toastmasters International said, you know, we need to do something about this. And Pathways was born. Before this became a huge problem for them, Pathways was born. And so the question is Pathways good? There has been a raging debate for a few years after Pathways was introduced. It was introduced in 2017. And you know, to this day, I think there is some tension. Now that tension is going to go away quickly after today, because today is the last day of the traditional program that existed before Pathways. I don't know how many people on the call realize this, but today is that day that.
Well, with one exception, right?
Yeah.
The HPL.
I'm sorry?
The HPL.
Oh, yeah. No, HPL and your service actually carries over. I'm talking about the traditional program.
Right, but they extended the time to finish your HPL and do club coach for an additional year.
This is news to me. Okay.
But all the other awards are gone.
Gone. All right. Yeah, so I didn't see that, but thank you very much for bringing that up. So we all leave with the most up-to-date information. So I didn't, thank you for reminding us that. Thank you very much. And so if you look at Pathways, there are 11 paths and 360. Yes, I said 360 unique competencies. Now, I'm a product of the traditional program, but you know what? I love Pathways. And the reason I love Pathways is because it gives me renewed sense of something to pursue. You know, I could go do my DTM all over again. There's nothing wrong with the manuals, if you ask me, right, from the traditional program. But I think this program, the Pathways program, really is an amazing set of competencies that they've made available that are more in line with today's leaders, right? That's what, we always talk about Toastmasters as being, the motto is where leaders are made. So if you want to make the right leaders, you have to have the right program, one that is in tune with the times. And that's what this is, right? These 11 paths. And so whether it is engaging humor, I'm actually doing a couple of paths now. Presentation mastery is what I wanted to do, because in my line of work, I'm in business development uh, line of work, sales, biz dev. And so if I don't master presentations, I'm going to struggle, right? So this is why I really chose that path. And some of the other paths that make sense for me are things like engaging humor. If you ask me, I'm not the most humorous person there is. And so I really need to, up my game. And so these paths are really motivating for me. Now, what's the difference between Pathways and the traditional program, you may ask? So Pathways was introduced about 3 years ago, and the content was updated. The traditional program, I was surprised to find this, that it has been around since the 1970s. By the way, feel free to jump in, and if there are things that you know that's more up to date, please share. Now, if you look back at the traditional program, there were two separate tracks. There was the communication track and the leadership track. I grew up in that program. I've spent just about seven years in Toastmasters. And I came through this traditional program where you had the CC manual and the CL manual. John, you don't have to worry about that if you're new to Toastmasters or others. You just got into Pathways to start with. But for those who have been, of us that have been around for a while, you experience this. Now, there is no longer, people get confused by this particular thing that I'm about to say. People still ask, is there a separate competent leader or a leadership track? And the answer is no, because it's a fully integrated track with both communication and leadership elements. Now, we're going to get to the third difference, and this is where I think people woke up at the board of directors. The traditional program had member achievement that was really low, less than 10% of the members were achieving competent communicator, less than 2% were achieving competent leader path, the track, and then less than 1% were getting to advanced level. Now it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's something that is not right. Because when you establish a program, and by the way, these numbers came from Toastmasters as to why if you go back and investigate why they put Pathways in place, they're hoping to really improve these numbers, because you can see with these kind of numbers, the traditional program was bound to fail right over time. So that's why they introduced Pathways. And this Pathways really, with some of the paths that they've introduced, it's an opportunity to increase this achievement. And that's what they're hoping for. Now,
did their stats show, like, did more people achieve these awards early on in the 70s and then it tapered low? Or is this just overall?
Yeah, I asked this question, actually. I didn't find the stats for it, but I suspect that's what happened. What I heard from some of the people that went to Toastmasters, have visited Toastmasters International or engaged with some of the international leadership, they said actually over time, to your point, Jill, actually it got worse over time. And that's when the alarm bells started ringing. My God, this is going to, go. We are headed to the cliff, right? And that's not what should happen. So now in the traditional program, also the other thing. By the way, great question. I wish I had the specific stats for you of how that climb down happened, but the general agreement is that that's what happened. Now, the flexibility is a little less. I mean, I have been a fan of the traditional program because I grew up in it, but I do agree that the flexibility is lesser because you have two different tracks. There are these leadership and communication elements are not quite integrated, as you can, if you think about, if some of you probably have done both paths, both options, if you will, the traditional program as well as the pathways, you'll realize if you've done both that you can see why we're saying it's not as flexible. The traditional program is not as flexible as the pathways program.
I'll just break in. Larry, are you a fan of Pathways?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, I originally when I first introduced it, and I still think they should have kept the CC manual.
Right.
I really do.
There are elements of that to which I agree, but
Yeah.
the people that really complain about Pathways never really embrace the traditional system either. They
Yeah,
never
right.
had, advanced awards. So you have to be careful when you're talking to people. You have to ask them, how far did you go? Satish is a distinguished Toastmaster. Larry's a distinguished Toastmaster. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I love the Pathways program. I see exactly what they intended to do, and I think they implemented it really well. And the flexibility is one of the high points of it. So when you talk to people about the old system versus the new system, find out how far they went, and you'll find that DTMs, or that people who have been all the way through the system, are the most likely to embrace Pathways today.
And once they opened it up so you could see through the whole path, that opened up the whole thing tremendously.
Yeah, they keep making improvements to it, and that's something we can all take some assurance from.
Yeah.
And Satish, continue. I know you're in a hurry.
Oh, I'm almost done. One more chart, and then we'll open this up for much more discussion. Thank you for kind of jumping in there, Dennis. It really helps to make this a two-way conversation and ask for input. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this. When I first went to Pathways, I was thinking, what the heck? I know this is being recorded. I would use more choice words, but when I first went there, and this was in the early days of Pathways, I would say 2018, it's improved a lot since then. Now, what was overwhelming was the whole navigation of Pathways, right? The way you went through the different paths and different levels, it was not very intuitive, and you would get lost. I mean, in the first year of Pathways, I remember thinking, what the hell have they done? Taken such a nice program, the traditional program, and made it so difficult to navigate. Well, the good news is things have changed. Things are starting, continuing to improve. And they have opened up the paths, as Larry was saying. They have made it a little more, a lot more, I would say, intuitive. I mean, now I can navigate paths better than I ever could. And maybe that's just a matter of getting used to this. But then I think they have also put some true effort in making it easier. Now, this is the last chart I have. Some of the frequently asked questions, and I don't have to cover every one of these, but I'll say a couple things. One is, how much do each of the paths cost? It's $20 after the first path. So the first path is free, unless you want it in printed version, in which case I believe they'll charge you about $25 for each printed version. And
45.
Sorry?
45.
Yeah, it's 20 plus 25, so it's 45 that way, right?
Okay, right.
Yeah. So what they do is for each, so the first path is free, but if you want a printed path, that path will cost you $25. The second path onwards, it's $45 for each path because it's $20 to select a path online, and then $25 for each printed version. Now you might ask, why do they charge more than the 25 for the printed version, right? Because there's a lot of content online, videos, there's a lot of resources, other things that they have made available online. Even if you get a printed path, you might want to use that in conjunction with the printed material, right? So that's why I think they charge you $45 for each path. It's actually split into 20 and 25.
I'm going to
So,
throw in another thought about the printing. In the traditional manuals, people were photocopying the evaluation sheets and just turning that in. So they weren't paying for the manuals. As a result, Toastmasters was losing millions of dollars per year on their copyrighted materials. So this is something that Pathways has fixed. You can't get credit for a Pathways path that you haven't paid for. And finally, our organization is making the money they should have been making all along.
And there's only 5 paths that you can actually get printed.
yeah, that's correct. There is presentation mastery, there's leadership development, there's strategic relationships, dynamic leadership, and team collaboration. Those are 5 paths you can actually get printed. 6 paths still you cannot get printed today, right? So that's good to keep in mind. The second question, and this is kind of a interesting question. How do I know which path is right for me? This was a question that came to mind. I've been married for 18 years, and I have a simple answer: ask your spouse. No, I'm just kidding. Right? That's not what you want to do. You really, I mean, you could ask your spouse. I'm sure he or she would know. In my case, she does know which path is right for me. Not just in Pathways, but in general. That was supposed to be a joke. But the
It was.
there is a very nice assessment within Toastmasters.org that you can take, which will, once you take the assessment, it'll give you 3 paths that best match your responses, right? So that's a good place to start. The other thing to do is, the way I did it was, when I looked through the paths and some of the description, there are very good descriptions of these paths. You can actually look at read through the description, find out which of those paths really talk to you, right? I don't know how else to explain it. And also talk to people that have taken these paths, and find out, people that are similar to you, maybe in a similar profession to you or similar interests. Find out what worked for them, which paths were nice. But the most objective way to find out that I've used is that online assessment. It was actually pretty good. From what I saw, the 3 paths it recommended, one was presentation mastery, was the first one. So I chose that, right? So any questions, any comments on that?
I have one question, Satish.
Yeah, please.
Do they have an app for navigating the pathways on the phone?
Navigating pathways on the phone. The only app I know of is the Toastmaster app, which is pretty lame, if you ask me. I didn't know this is being recorded, but that's the truth. It doesn't have a lot of stuff just yet. As far as I know, no app is available for that purpose, for that specific purpose.
I would agree with that they have not developed anything for the phone yet. And you should, as VPE, you should highly discourage them from, or you should completely discourage them from using a phone to access Pathways or the Toastmasters International website.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah. You're right, Vicky. It's not built for phone. I don't think it is, because I've tried to use it, and it can be quite confusing and overwhelming, right? So I think it'll get there someday, and I think there's a lot of good effort being put in by Toastmasters to improve this as we go, but it's not there yet from a mobile standpoint. Now, one of the questions that people ask is, are all paths the same complexity? I don't know what the source of this, what the intention is. Maybe people are saying maybe some paths have less levels, or, you can kind of game the system a little bit. The truth is, all paths have the same 5 levels. It doesn't matter what path you choose. You get the same 5 levels, and you have to go through the same 5 levels, as much as I know. Anything to add, anybody that has experience with this?
I think it's safe to say you can't really choose a bad path.
That's
because
right.
there is a lot of overlap between them. And with the electives, you can, even if you choose a leadership path, you can focus on certain aspects of the public speaking. And the same is true of the public speaking. You can focus on some leadership skills that are in the electives. So I'm sad to see people who start 3 paths, and the first thing you do, of course, is exactly the same levels for levels 1 and 2. So I would encourage people, if you stick a path, even if it turns out it's not exactly what you were looking for, go ahead and complete that one and start another one rather than trying to do multiple at once. Vicki, you had something to say?
Yeah, I think it's important as Vice President of Education that you understand, I think it's the first 3 or is it the first 2 paths in a pathway of all of the pathways are exactly the same. And as Vice President of Education, if you can just encourage people knowing that, it's going to be really, it's going to simplify your job. It's going to really help you.
Yeah, great point.
I'm sorry, can you repeat part of that? Which ones are exactly the same?
Gosh, I don't have it in front of me, but at least the first 2 levels of a pathway,
Okay.
possibly the first 3 levels. I'm not
Gotcha.
sure.
But the message is the beginning segments are kind of working on fundamentals and preparing you to specialize later.
Specialize in your pathway. I think like the first speech or of any of every single level 1 is an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone's going to do the leadership style. Right, Dennis?
Yeah.
It used to be that there was a guideline. No one is supposed to give an evaluation until they've given 3 speeches. That was the rule of thumb, but they didn't have it built into the curriculum. Now we have that, where the second lesson that you do is evaluation, so that people are prepared for that. Another thing is mentorship. We've always known it's extremely important to have mentors to keep people engaged, not just the protege, but the mentor himself to be engaged with the club. Well, now they've baked it into the curriculum. So they have that repeated in the first couple of levels. When you get to the 3rd level, this is where you're right, Vicki, because the first lesson is, let's talk about your leadership style, if it's a leadership track, or let's talk about your communication style, if it's a communication track. So even then, it's still the same sort of lesson as you go through. But what's nice is after that, you get to do these advanced lessons that in the past you couldn't do until you completed your CC, which is 10 speeches. Now you can start exploring humorous speeches, or speaking to persuade, when you've only reached the 3rd level. We're only talking about your 5th or 6th speech in the Toastmasters program. So that's another nice thing about Pathways, getting to do the fun stuff in a way that you couldn't do before.
Yeah, and I think another great point is that after level 3, before you can go on to level 4, you have to input at least 3 major roles, sort of administrative roles, being Toastmaster, General Evaluator, and I think maybe Table Topics Master. And so as VPE, that's really important, and it's great that it's built into the pathways, that you can't finish a pathway without taking on administrative roles.
Oh, so that's hard-coded in. That's great.
Yeah.
Question about the printed material. I have not been tempted to look at that. Are many people going that route? And the ones that do, are they finding it useful?
I can go there. John, actually we can download all the PDFs for each and every project.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to buy it. You can just download it. There's an option, it comes in the middle, that you can have that project as is in the PDF form.
Yeah, I mean, I've had no shortage of resources. That's why I wondered if people were tempted to pay the extra money and get the quote unquote printed curriculum.
No, if you don't, John, if you're not the kind who wants to print this, by lesson, etc., right? So you can just get it in a nice packaged form. I've seen the printed material. It's nicely professionally done. It's all printed, it's organized, all that, right? if you don't want to go through that hassle, get the printed material. But I think it's all there. I just print out stuff and read it. So.
But I guess my question is, are many people doing it? Do we know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I've hardly seen too many printed materials in the club. Where you can see this is when you go to your club or any other club, you'd expect to see these manuals lying around if a lot of people were getting it. But I don't think so. I hardly have seen too many people have that.
There's some old crotchety people. I'm not getting on any dang computing machine, Toastmasters.
Yeah.
And you can offer them the printed option and they have their happy little manual. So that's really who it's for. It's to be sure that we don't leave anybody behind.
Very well said. And then Basecamp is one of the things that, it's not quite, it's not one of my favorite things in Pathways. I will say that until to this day, but it does the job, right? This is where you can find all the resources. They're organized. It's still a little bit of a mystery, some parts of Basecamp to me. And maybe Dennis, you're better at this than I am, or maybe there are other people on this call that are better at it than I am. But Basecamp to me is parts of it are a little bit of mystery. But there's tons of great resources. I love how it's organized. I love the number of resources they have, right? Vicky, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I agree that Basecamp is kind of tricky to go through. And as Vice President of Education, John, you're going to go in, you're going to log in as Basecamp manager. And you're going to go check to see if anybody's got a pending request, and you want to make sure, I'm sure you've probably heard this already, you want to make sure that not only do you submit and approve and write your name and your club name saying, John Harvey, I've approved this Pathways level completion, and then go into Club Central and complete it there so that your club gets credit. That's key. And one thing that I've had trouble with, and that I finally, this is the way I handle it, in order to get to Club Central, I log out of Basecamp, and that brings me back to the Toastmasters International website, and I go into Club Central that way. So rather than searching on the bottom and trying to find how to get back to Toastmasters International and Club Central, just log out of Basecamp.
Oh, you need to put that tip down, in big bold letters, maybe on the interstate or something. That last tip that she offered, my God, it's a lifesaver. Just do that, right?
And actually, the other thing is you can just type toastmasters.org in the top. You don't even have to log out, and it'll take you to the main page. And then you don't have to log back in or anything.
I also want to clarify one thing. Vicky said that you have to turn it into Club Central for the club to get credit. That's true, but the member will not get credit for the award until you've submitted it in both places. Now, the big mistake I made was that I went and approved a pending award, yay! And then months later, I found out that I was supposed to do it in Club Central as well. So I did. I approved that level 1 award. Well, out of curiosity, I wondered, gee, has he earned more than one? So I went back to the pop-up menu, and sure enough, level 2 was available. I said, oh, he must have earned level 2 already too. And I selected level 2.
Are you guys talking about Club Central or Leadership Central?
Club Central.
Well, it's Club Central, which is only a club leader can go to. Club Central.
Yeah, it's the submitting awards is the issue.
Yes, this is on a club level. You go to, well, let's take a look at it, shall we? We shall.
Yes, good idea.
This is the beauty. This is the reason that I wanted to put this together is we can do this now.
The other thing I usually do was I open up two windows, both with Toastmasters International, and I can switch back and forth between the two.
Okay, good. Yeah. So let me, I guess I should have figured out what I was going to do before I started this up, but let's.
Hi, I also observed something like the where you approve their member completion request under the club Basecamp manager, and also where you submit awards and the Club Central, they are not linked. That means even a member failed to submit a request for completion, you can still submit an award for them. So that means, yeah, so that actually happened, accidentally happened once in my club, but luckily that member, we did the completion request. So we submit award before the member submitted the completion request.
Yeah, I didn't know you could do that.
Well, yeah. Well, that's exactly what I did. I only figured that out when I looked to see if he had done 3, and then I said, it looks like I could select 3 as well, and so I stopped, and I'm glad I did. Otherwise, I would have given him a DTM. He would have gone home.
Yeah, we had a
You guys,
VPE that did that one. Oh, he completed the path for the guy in about maybe 3 minutes.
you guys are going from Basecamp to Leadership Central, then to Club Central from Leadership Central, right?
Yeah, yes.
That's what I'm seeing. Okay, that's where my confusion came in. I go
Okay.
to Leadership Central and then Club Central.
Yes.
So those of you who have never been a club officer before haven't seen a screen that looks like the one I'm showing right now. And that usually you just see the Go to Basecamp button. But if you're a secretary, vice president of education, or a president, you have access to the Basecamp manager here. Now, if you belong to more than one club and you're an officer in more than one club, look at how special I am. You'll have a pop-up menu and you get to choose which of the clubs you're going to work with at the moment. So,
So I can't, this is an example of I can't get to that screen because I was in Basecamp unless I log out and log back in.
yes, you've got to come back in and then log in as the Basecamp manager. Go back to that start screen.
Yeah, but John, you might get the access tomorrow, not today.
That's exactly right, because it starts July 1st as the new officer.
I copy.
So all this cool stuff, you just get to look. Look at me, I'm having fun. You can't.
I won't sleep tonight. I want the power along with the title.
Don't let him scare you, John.
It'll go to your head, man. Now, fortunately, I'm a good vice president of education. If I'd come in here and there were a lot of requests, you would all know what a slacker I am. But there aren't. But what you'll see is under requested by, it'll say Satish Shenoy 9 times out of 10. And then what the training was that he completed, date, and the options are check, yes, or X, no. And here's the deal, vice presidents of education. Toastmasters is a self-education organization. So if someone tells you that they've completed their projects and they're satisfied that they've done so, I don't know too many people who lie about this stuff. So don't worry about them getting away with something or what have you. If they say that they've completed their program, approve it, unless you know that they're just dirty, rotten scoundrels. And then we can take that up separately. Once you have approved it, it's going to give you a little pop-up menu that says add notes. And usually you'll just put your name in there saying, I approved it. That's all there is to this aspect of it. And that's all I knew about. Now, of course, I will admit that's all I knew about because I didn't watch the helpful videos that Toastmasters has so generously provided. And there are lots of educational videos you can watch for all of this. I, like many people, get a little tired of, hi, I'm Brad. I'm going to teach you about Toastmasters today and the fun you can have while you learn. Yeah, so it's difficult for me to swallow those videos as well. But by not swallowing the videos, I did end up suffering a lot more than I had to. All right, so I'm going to go back to Toastmasters.org.
So does the member have to take an action to make that request, or does it happen automatically when you complete your pathways level?
That's a very good question. So what a user has to do, and this is before you even get involved, they have to be sure on each level that they fill out the evaluation at the end. That's what triggers the completion of the level. A lot of people don't do that, and they sit in limbo. So remind them of that. Once they've done all the evaluations, they'll get to the last lesson, which is essentially turn in this award. Level completion is what it's called. They'll click the level completion thing. They do an evaluation of the entire path. The entire level. And then they click a button that says submit level for approval. That's when you get an email. Now, is anybody else having trouble getting those emails? Because in a couple of my clubs, I don't always get them. Vicki?
Well, so I wasn't getting them at first, and then what's really great when you're a club officer is that you can go in and change the settings for your club. And I went in and I saw that all of the emails were being sent to Kate, our treasurer. So I changed it to my email address, and then I was getting them all.
Okay, where are those settings at?
They are in Club Central.
Try and walk me through it. I'm going to see if I can find it.
I'm not following.
Okay, so go to.
I'm not getting notifications at all.
Yeah, so the
I'm
emails
not
are going
able to promote anybody. This has been an extraordinarily frustrating system for me.
Yeah.
I can't get it to work right, and the training videos are just nonsensical. They're not helping.
But I like bread. I'm kidding. Okay, so Vicki?
Right. Let's see.
Scroll down. Scroll down.
How about club contact and meeting information?
Club contact and meeting information.
Yeah, go ahead and click on it, Dennis. That one. Go ahead, click on it. And you see this email, the email that says contact --1577@toastmastersclub.org?
That one
Go
there.
ahead. What?
Go ahead.
So go ahead and change that, Dennis, to your email.
Okay.
Point of question.
I now know that I can do that, so thank you. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I just got out of another meeting. I'm Michael Ann, and I am the outgoing VPE of Heart to Heart Toastmasters. So my understanding is this email address is the email contact that Toastmasters International sends everything, including messages that would also be appropriate for the Vice President membership. Does anyone know any different?
I agree with you. I'm not certain that this is the one that, Vicki, now you're saying that after you changed this, you started getting notifications about people completing their Pathways awards. That's something I need to research.
Yes, that's what happened. And I don't think that I received anything unusual otherwise. Although you may be right. Is your name Ann?
Michael Ann.
Michael Ann, yes, I think you are right. I think I received information. Somebody wanted to check out our club. I got that one email.
Yeah. Yep.
And so really, I mean, most people are coming to us through Meetup as opposed to through Toastmasters International. But then I just forwarded that email to VP of Membership.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like it's such a huge volume, you know?
And this is Jill. I had actually asked if we could have separate emails, and they said no. It's one contact, so you have pick the one person in your club that you want to get the emails. And so I get all of the emails and I forward them out to the other officers, include like the membership.
Thank you so much for the tip. Actually, we were struggling with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, you're getting the most important, you're the most important person. People are submitting for their level completions, and you need to know about it. I mean, the only other way is you tell them, you say, okay, if you've completed a level, let me know, send me an email, because I won't get any notifications. So we've done it that way too.
I want to clarify though, Jill, do you now get the emails about level completion? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I get the emails on level completion, as well as if someone goes through Toastmasters.org and wants to visit our club, or
And
any other club business comes to me.
This is
And then
I host these things is because now I've learned that, and when I teach in 2 weeks, I'll say, hey, you'll probably want to know this, and I'll seem like I know it. Michael Ann has raised her hand.
I'd like to offer what we started doing this past year. We're still working out some quirks, but we created a Gmail address for our club, and that is the contact information. And every officer has the keys to the kingdom to getting into that, but we can also set up that Gmail address to forward messages based on subject heading to different officers. We haven't fully operationalized that. But the idea is that the messages that are meant for membership have a certain subject heading, and the messages that we get in education have a different subject heading, so that we can then keep a consistent club email address that is not tied to a personality, a person, but is tied to the club itself. And that's a direction that we're trying to move into. I know smaller clubs and newer clubs that may not work, but for us, we're trying to create like something a little bit more systematized, where the individual moves in and out of the role, but the role is getting the information.
That's a good tip. Larry, did you want to say something? You're muted.
What did you do there? All right. But when we get notification of somebody submitting an award, it says Vice President of Education. So that's coming from somewhere within TI, not this here.
I get the notification when they receive the award. I get the acknowledgement. What I don't get is the message when they turn in the award for my approval. And that's what we're discussing here.
Yeah.
I get that it comes from Basecamp. It says Vice President of Education, so and so has completed a, level 2, da 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 da.
Not necessarily. What we've trained our people to do, and of course that has to be repeated because we always have new members or people forget, is to say that the system is supposed to alert the Vice President of Education that you have completed a level and you're awaiting your award. But just to be sure, make sure that you personally email the VPE so that we have a kind of a safety valve there. Because I don't always get notices that someone, I regularly, particularly now coming up on today's being the last day of the rest of our life, the big deadline, I've been going like 2 and 3 times a week. I just go into member requests because people are scrambling. But in the rest of the year, I haven't been doing that. And sometimes people are like scratching their heads, well, why haven't I received this award? And it's because I didn't hear from Toastmasters International, and I didn't get a heads up from them to go to the Pathways Base Camp. So it's a mystery to me. So we just have our little backup.
Right. I started to show how to submit the education award in the Club Central. So we did the approval in Base Camp. Now you come to Club Central. And again, John, this is going to be new for you tomorrow. You click Submit Education Awards. And everything is slow today because everybody's trying to get their stuff in at the last minute. You scroll through, find the name of the person, and you'll notice that Dennis Dawson doesn't appear here. You can't turn in your own awards, so you have to get the president or the secretary to do it for you. I'll select Doug King. You get a pop-up menu, and this shows you all of the awards that it would be possible for Doug to select. So all of the legacy program, still good for one more day. But what you're going to see going forward is probably just the one award available, their next level in their current path. So you select that, review the award submission. I haven't said that he got it yet, you see. And so I haven't submitted the award. I can still back out. It's not too late. If I click submit award, he's already won that, even though he hasn't actually done the work. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to instead just leave the screen. That's all I have to do. I don't have to undo it in any sort of way. All right. So that's the most brief overall introduction to this extremely important aspect of the job, that you'll get a notification, or you should check regularly to see if there are any paths in Basecamp that are pending approval. When you see them there, you approve them. Yay, half the job is done. Then you come over to Leadership Central, go to Club Central, go to Submit Education Awards, and submit it here as well. So there's the pathways part, and that's really to make sure that the curriculum continues and they're able to move on to the next path. There's this part that makes sure that they get the credit for the educational award. They'll get, in some cases, they get a certificate or what have you. And the club gets the recognition for the Distinguished Club Program. Now, are you all familiar with the Distinguished Club Program?
I got a
I think that we'll spend some time in next week, and we'll talk about the Distinguished Club Program, how that ties into this role, and how you should really think of the two in sync as you're planning for your activities throughout the year. John, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm having an issue that I think will be instructive along the lines we've been discussing. So I'm trying to complete level 1. I have the screen that says, congratulations, you have completed this project, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't show as complete in my pathways, so I can't.
John, I can tell you, sometimes after the VP does the approval, it will show complete. It happened to me, one of the members sent me. Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to complete a project. So doesn't that just happen automatically?
No, you have to evaluate yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to evaluate yourself after every project.
Right. Yes, and I have the screen saying I've completed my project.
Yes, but did you do the evaluation portion?
Yes.
But
It's the only way to get that screen is it to do the evaluation.
Wait, are you saying you can't get to the next project?
Correct.
Oh, that's odd.
Well, no, I could launch a new project. I just can't complete the one I just completed.
Well, so it's you completed a project, but you didn't complete a level, right?
Right.
So I don't know if I would worry too much about.
Yeah.
Would you be?
Well, no, it says status in progress, and the
John,
ones before that say completed.
Would you be comfortable sharing your screen right now, and we can all look?
Yeah, that'd be good.
It's on a different computer.
Oh, okay. If you don't figure it out by next week, and this is an invitation to everybody.
I'll figure it out. I thought you guys might know the answer. I'll figure it out.
I think you will. Yeah.
There is, I have.
The answer would be it just takes a moment to update.
No, I have encountered this when this is something that I have to do in training new people, and I'm stepping out of VP education, but I'm going to be VP pathways for this reason for the next year to get much more deliberative in how I train people in getting to know this. But often people will have it complete, but that red checkbox doesn't show, and until that red checkbox shows on the completion, the Vice President of Education doesn't have a signal to issue the award. So there is a step to follow after you've completed all your projects. And I found that a lot of people are confused about that, about exactly what they have to do. You're nodding your head, Dennis, so you know that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We're not the first to be confused, and we are certainly never going to be.
Exactly.
Larry, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is I pulled up one of the emails that I get, and it comes from Basecamp saying, "Dear Vice President of Education, a member of your club has reached an important milestone, level so-and-so and so-and-so," and it tells you step by step what to do. So that's coming from Basecamp. I didn't set that up. It automatically is sent by when you become a VPE. The other thing is when you're completing a level, you have to finish the final evaluation, but then there's one more step that you have to go back out of it and click on it and then mark complete. You have to hit complete.
Correct.
So that's the step it looks like you're probably missing.
Yeah, I think we agree. Yeah. And
Avi,
once you know once you know it's there, then you know it's there. You've ridden the bicycle. But the beginning phase of really getting through level 1 and seeing that difference is something I think we have to hold hands a little bit to guide
Yeah,
people through.
Because it's not intuitive.
This is not intuitive, correct?
The
You're
other
right,
thing
Larry.
is you can see the percentage of how much you've completed of that level. John,
Yeah,
what does it say? Does it say 100%?
it says 0, and I have another screen that says you've completed this project. So I'm not. Yeah, it doesn't make. It's not. Something's wrong.
Oh, wow.
Avi, you've been trying to stick.
Yes. So, Dennis, I have a question for you guys. Like, suppose a request comes in tonight for approval, and tomorrow morning I'm not the VPE. What happens to that request?
Goes to the other VPE, the new one.
So Miss, tonight it's going to come to me, and then it's going to automatically show in his account.
Yes.
Yes.
If it was already sent to you tonight, you
Yes.
probably have to send it to the VPE tomorrow. When he logs into Basecamp, he'll see it, but he probably won't get the notification email,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But
Yeah,
in
that's true.
Basecamp, it'll show up.
Right.
Okay. For him, for the new VPE, it will
Yep.
show. Okay.
Yeah. And the good news is your club's going to get it for next year.
Right. You get the DCP points for next year.
One thing to keep in mind, Toastmasters is not a punitive organization. They will always work with you to try and get you the credit that you deserve. But there are times when you just miss that deadline and they will have a hard cutoff. So hopefully everybody got their stuff in last week. Now, as you come into the VPE role, let's get it into our heads. We're going to submit all of the awards as soon as we possibly can. We want every member to get the credit for the achievements that they have accrued. And we don't sandbag. If you get toward the end of the year, you might say, oh, well, we'll turn in your award in July and that'll count toward next year. Sandbagging like that is really cynical. You're saying, I don't think that we'll be able to do that well next year. We'll hold on to that. No, everybody get credit when you earn it and then go on and earn more awards.
Keep it clean.
The attitude that we have. Larry.
Well, the other thing you have to be concerned about is like I'm in 3 different clubs. I think you were in 4. Is that once I get approved in Basecamp, I tell the VPE, don't submit it for this club. I'm going to submit it to the other club. And so I tell the other VPE. So you don't want your VPE just automatically saying approve Basecamp and going to Club Central and saying it's on our club. If you have more than one club, you can't do that.
As Vice President of Education, it's really important that we watch for that. If we know that a member is in more than one club or we see that they have that option. One of my clubs took a level 4 that I earned this year and they didn't need it. They already had one. So it didn't count toward their DCP, taking it away from another club that needed it in that particular case. So this is only the case if you've got members who are in multiple clubs. It's not that frequent, but it's frequent enough if you know about it. Be sure that you check with them before you submit their awards for your club.
Right.
Okay, we are past our 1 hour mark. And actually, I have to move on tonight. Normally, I would stay on. My email address should be available to all of you because I sent out the invitation. And I put it in here again, tmdennisdawson@gmail.com. If you have a question, especially as you get started this week, please do not hesitate to send me email, because if I don't know the answer, we've got Larry, we've got Michael, Ann, we've got Jill here, lots of other people. An expert is somebody who knows who to ask, and that's how I am your expert. I am surrounded by experts, and I stand on the shoulders of giants. All right? So,
Dennis, now because I came in late, you may have said this earlier, but I see that you're recording this meeting. Is that going to be available for any of our? I've got an incoming VPE who wasn't able to make it tonight.
yes, I'm going to make this available. I believe I stated that in the email.
Okay,
So
great.
by participating, you're agreeing, yay, that it's okay to share this so that other vice presidents' education can benefit.
Right, good, thank you.
Way to go, John. He fixed his problem.
Hey.
Woohoo!
That's great. And John, not only are you not the first person to encounter what you just encountered, I believe everyone back to Benjamin Franklin has encountered that problem in the Pathways program. You're in very good company.
I generally think it's pretty good. I'm not having that much problem with it.
And it is much better. The worst thing when I started, and this was just last July, about a year ago, if you clicked on a different window, your Pathways window went to the back, and if you clicked launch a second time, it didn't bring it to the front.
Right.
So that pop-up window disappeared, and that's how everybody got lost. All they had to do was open it in a second tab instead of a second window, and suddenly nobody was getting lost.
How will I find out about the formal training and get signed up?
You can go to the District 57 website and look for TLI, that's Toastmasters Leadership Institute. It will be held on July 18th, which is a Saturday, and if you can't make it on the 18th, it will be repeated on August 15th.
Got it.
Okay. And by then, all of you are going to be so knowledgeable, you'll be great to have in the class because you can answer all the questions.
All right.